welcome back to another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. This is going to be a quick one today, but guess who's drawing lines in the sand? Well, it's not just one person, actually. It seems to be a few different commentators. If you didn't pay attention to AmFest, which, let's be clear, I didn't pay the most attention to it, but there are some things that broke into the mainstream that caught my eye. One was Ben Shapiro throwing down the gauntlet and Tucker kind of responding, and I want to go into an article today that comes in and talks about Ben Shapiro's perspective. With that, I want to know your opinion. Throw it down in the comments section. What do you think Ben Shapiro's speech symbolizes? Is it the death of an old Nell conservatism, of an old perspective conservatism that has no place nowadays? Or is it the turning point, ironically, that will actually awaken some of the younger conservatives to realize that they have been caught up in a new movement, or at least a movement that has different values than the ones that some of us and some others may have been caught up in when they were younger. So with that, throw your comment down there in the comment section. I'd love to know what you have to say. This is a short article from the National Review, but it does a pretty good job doing a little bit of heavy lifting for the average person to get some background on his speech and a little bit of a speech that he gave earlier in the week. Quote, first at the Heritage Foundation, he argued, Ben Shapiro, by the way, headline for this, I should have read it, says, cheers for Ben Shapiro. Quote, first at the Heritage Foundation, he argued that a political movement, like a nation, needs borders. Very interesting and probably smart way to outline that in order to really draw attention to it and make it stand out in people's minds, especially in the era of strong border conservatism. Quote, he illustrated the point with reference to Heritage Foundation mission statement, which supports free enterprise, limited government, individual freedom, traditional American values, and a strong national defense. Quote, he then compared those principles with the beliefs of Tucker Carlson. And then, what did he go on to say at the TPUSA rally? Quote, a couple of days later, Shapiro spoke at TPUSA's AmFest conference. He addressed the rank pandering to audience, widespread conspiracy theorizing, and cowardly unwillingness to call out lunacy on the right that has infected the right-wing influencer space. Here, Shapiro focused on the absolutely cracked theories promoted by Candace Owens about Charlie Kirk's assassination. Quote on quote, goes on to talk about the rest of it. So, will Mr. Shapiro get his Buckley moment? I'm actually looking at a biography of Buckley right now, a man who did shape the conservative movement, who did hold the power in his hands to say what is and isn't allowed in conservative circles. And of course, there are limitations to his power. Of course, he is not a kingmaker, but a man who had enough clout, who had enough clarity of vision, who had a strong enough ideology and a coherent worldview that he could speak to others. Maybe some of those are conflicting and overlapping, but I think all of them actually speak to his power, but why he also got there. Is Ben Shapiro going to be able to be the next Buckley? Will he be a man who can draw these lines and push these out of the movement? I think on some level, he probably thinks he can be. He believes that he doesn't necessarily have enough clout, but he has the truth on his side. And that's not to say he doesn't. I think there's a lot of points there that he makes that are much more true than the people deriding him would say, or even the people that are on the opposite side of the argument would say. But I don't know, just because his values are true, I don't know if he has enough of the popular will. That in an era of decentralized information, it's allowed the right wing to grow. It's allowed for the prospering of a right wing environment that is no longer burdened by a left wing hat, so to speak, a pinnacle of the pyramid that is left wing journalism and trying to fit your conservative ideas within that framework in order to make sure that you can reach the largest amount of people possible. And instead of there being one pyramid on which there is a filter at the top that allows any given person who controls said filter to change the narrative, alter it before it reaches the masses, before it blasts its way out of the pyramid, out of the ideological thought process into the mainstream. Now you have thousands upon thousands of pyramids stretching across an entire nation. You have the term that people love so much is bubbles, but now each pyramid has building blocks and structures underneath it, thinkers who they lean on, who they're able to push out as the true speakers, the ones who have a coherent ideology, the ones who speak their truth to the widest audience, or at least find the way to intellectually justify it. And maybe you could argue that some of these pyramids have interlocking corners, that they actually share some of the same foundations, and then on top of that, you have your ecosystems of commentators, and then your final platforms that allow these different perspectives. Or maybe even it's the opposite. Maybe the platforms themselves are the largest literal platform, and there are a whole bunch of triangles on those. I think you could conceptualize it a lot of different ways, but I think my point is clear, which is we live in an era of such decentralization that it's hard to have a Buckley. I don't know if there is a moment, a place, or even the ability to be a Buckley anymore. Maybe I'm a little mistaken. Maybe I need to actually read that Buckley book in order to understand the man more and what he did and understand the moment. But that's enough for me. I want to know your opinion. Throw it down there in the comment section. I'm going to link today's article so you can read it in its entirety underneath that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at your DailyFlip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the 6 and 6 podcast, which is 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less on Tuesday and Thursday. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.